In August 1946, the McMahon Act forbade the disclosure of US nuclear information and necessitated the development of Britain's own nuclear deterrent program. The V-Force. The British Strategic Jet Bomber specification was issued in 1947. It called for an aircraft capable of carrying a 10,000-pound load at 500 knots with a range of 3,350 nautical miles at a ceiling of 50,000 feet. The bomb load, which was to be housed internally, was to be doubled over shorter ranges.
SOD for this sortie, I just point out as we climb over the hills, safety altitude will be 3,200 feet.
The 8 major British aircraft manufacturers all entered designs. Among them was a proposal from A.V. Rowe and Company at Chatterton near Manchester.
Okay, full FRC checks. I'll do the radio at high level. I'll leave the HF set up on Volmet so we can monitor the weather and transit, and otherwise SOP.
It was an all-wing design based on German research data.
Right, we'll descend from high level to be here at 6,000 feet.
After a series of major alterations and refinements, a revolutionary wing shape was decided upon, almost a pure triangle like the Greek letter D, hence the universally adopted name, Delta.
2, 1, now, that was 0601 Zulu.
This was to be the world's first delta-wing jet bomber, the Vulcan. The remarkable qualities of this design soon became apparent. Roly Falk, the aircraft's chief test pilot, thrilled the Farnborough crowd in 1955 with a climbing barrel roll. As well as a high degree of maneuverability, the Vulcan showed an exceptional rate of climb and descent. It could lose 20,000 feet in 90 seconds flat and recover to level flight in only 1,500 feet.
Here we go. Internal checks. Pilots, PFC order subs and fuel. All off, all lights on. Main warning lights. Up. Out. Helmets. On. Director horizons. Failure flags. Air brake switch. Crossbonds. Go film heating.
Load check.
APP bleed switch.
Is cross-hatched.
AVS master switch.
Closed mammins.
Canopy Jerson levers. Put in the roof monitor for port.
Okay, so starboard.
Canopy pointers. Safe football.
Safe lock starboard.
Reminder MI. 3 right. Bomb doors emergency switch. Okay.
Let's hold the check so a minute. We'll sign for the old 700.
I need a pen as well.
Okay, let's go with the pre-start checks then.
Canopy pointers. Safe football.
Safe lock starboard.
Bombay fuel pumps.
Off.
Extra supplies button is pressed. You on outside, Chief?
Chief's on.
200, please.
Coming on.
Propane compass. It's been checked. Stand by your artificial horizon. Correct button now. Press ahead of mine. Accelerometer. Set. Clear. Start. Engine selector switch. Is to normal. Ignition switch. Is on.
RPM and R. JPT coming up. Up to 15, 16. Oil pressure 3.
In the early 60s, early warning radar would give the V-Force a 4-minute warning in the event of a surprise missile attack. Vulcans stationed at this base could be scrambled in just under 2 minutes. Vulcans were equipped with a mass rapid startup facility where all 4 engines and electrical avionics would come to life almost instantly by pressing a single button in the cockpit.
Zero 01, clear right turn after departure, heading 340, climb flight level 180, squawk 1731, contact departures on 255.5.
The Lincolnshire bomber bases reached the highest degree of alert readiness in October 1962. As the Cuban Missile Crisis unfolded, the Valiant, Victor and Vulcan V bombers were armed and stood combat ready for a period of 3 days. Pilots and crew lived alongside their aircraft, poised for the alert klaxon, which fortunately never sounded.
01, clear takeoff, service wind 30020.
Clear takeoff, 01.
It should not be forgotten that the V-Force would have carried out the first strategic retaliatory strike on the enemy defenses, preceding the American SAC B-52s. The Vulcan B-2, with a wingspan of 111 feet, was 12 feet wider than the B-1, the extra size needed to accommodate the Blue Steel standoff nuclear weapon. The operated Olympus 200 series engines provided 18,000 pounds of static thrust each. '88 Vulcan B-2s were built for the RAF and were originally painted in a high-gloss white anti-radiation finish. In 1969, the role of Britain's nuclear deterrent was handed over to the Navy's Polaris submarine fleet. By the early 80s, the Vulcan was being phased out for replacement by the Tornado. Together with the other V bombers, it had valiantly defended the British Isles, but had now become obsolete and outmoded. Events in the South Atlantic, however, were to change that view. On the 1st of May 1982 at 10:50 p.m. local time, 2 Vulcans and 11 supporting Victor tankers took off from Ascension Island. The first sortie of Operation Blackbuck was underway. The target? Port Stanley Airfield. 3 days later, Captain John Reeve left the safety of Wide Awake Airfield to begin the second. The flight would take 16 hours, during which time the Vulcan would be refueled 5 times. This was to be the longest bombing mission ever mounted. After descending to 300 feet to avoid detection on enemy radar, Captain Reeve began a rapid climb to 16,000 feet. The attack had begun.
I would have felt frightened had we gone for a daylight raid. With a daylight raid, anybody who's got a gun can fire at you. With a nighttime raid, you're looking for technical electronic systems that can bring you down. We had the technology to combat those, and while the individual Argentinians, I've no doubt, were very brave and very competent pilots, I don't think they had the depth of technical expertise at sergeant, chief technician level to keep their kit right at the top line to make it work. Moreover, we had the advantage on the Vulcans, we were the first raid, and the first raid has always got the advantage of surprise. No, in all honesty, I thought our technology, old though it was going to be quite good enough to get through the defences of the Argentinians by night. By day, a different matter.
With bombing radar technology from the 50s and the known inaccuracies of the Vulcan system, the best chance of hitting the runway was to fly across it at an angle of 30 degrees and release the 21 1,000-pound bombs at quarter-second or 50-yard intervals.
When it came to the Falklands, there was no need to bomb from 40,000 feet. It was deemed, after a lot of thought, unwise to bomb from very low level, as that would put us within the range of Argentinian anti-aircraft fire. So we elected to bomb from 20,000 feet, and as we said at the time, we've spent the first 20 years bombing at high level, the next 20 years bombing at low level, and the one operational sortie we do, we bomb at the one height that no one had ever even considered in nearly 40 years of Vulcan flying would be relevant. It worked. One of the other considerations in picking the bombing height for the Falklands was the ballistic performance of the bombs. And there was some concern that if you dropped them from low level, there was a possibility with the low angle of grays that they would ricochet off the runway rather than actually penetrate and explode. Obviously dropping from 10, 15, 20,000 feet, not only is there more velocity on the bomb, but the point of impact is such that the bomb certainly isn't going to ricochet and will certainly penetrate and get through to the subsoil under the runway.
Closing on the target, the air electronics officer turned on the Vulcan's powerful electronic countermeasures equipment to jam the enemy's fire control radar, which was trying to lock onto the bomber. 2 miles short of the target, the bombs were released.
There was nothing that we could actually look down and say, that's Port Stanley and there's the airfield. But again, it didn't matter. The Vulcan has been designed to drop bombs by radar from day one. So from my point of view down the front, all I was doing was following electronic steering information, left, right, and in front of me a little needle was ticking down the range to bomb release.
20 seconds later, they hit the ground.
Our feeling was we were taking out a military target in a military operation, and I certainly had no moral qualms. I don't think anyone else in the crew had. If they had, they certainly never spoke about it. We were perfectly happy with what we did. We'd have done it again.
One struck the middle of the runway. This was sufficient to render the airfield inoperable to Argentine jets that were such a threat to the task force.
The Argentinians would be aware of what was happening in the sense that, first of all, the frontline strength of the Royal Air Force is never a secret. It can't be in a society like ours. They were well aware that Vulcans would be employed if we were going to bomb the Falklands, in the same way as obviously Harriers would be involved from the carrier. They were also aware of the capabilities of the Vulcan, and our initial plan was certainly for low-level raids. This was subsequently modified when we discovered the Argentinians had installed fairly sophisticated anti-aircraft weaponry. The only other aircraft physically capable of carrying the 1,000-pound bombs were the Buccaneers, and in fairness, the Buccaneers were probably a more capable aircraft with a better bombing system. The problem, as I understand, is, as on many jet engines, when you're lubricating the rear turbine, the oil is destroyed in the heat and is subsequently dumped overboard. And all jet engines lose something in the order of 3 to 4 pints an hour, depending on their size. Now, the Vulcan was designed to fly for a very long time and has got an oil tank which can tolerate that kind of loss. The Buccaneer, designed to fly comparatively short sorties, would have run out of oil for its engines after about 6 or 7 hours. One of the things that we discussed as aircrew was the possibility of operating the Vulcan over Argentina. Now, not to drop bombs, that would have been a political disaster, but just to show the Argentinians that we had the capability of getting through the defences, which I'm sure we did. And if you were an Argentinian civilian, if you suddenly hear a bomber whistling over Buenos Aires, a big Delta Wing aircraft 3 o'clock in the morning making a lot of noise, we've got your attention. And one of the things that would have made the Argentinian Air Force do, as they did to a very large extent, is hold back their aircraft for home defence. Now, the Mirages, which might well have been escorting, were in fact being held back for defence of the homeland, and the only aircraft they were being held back for was to defend against the Vulcan, which is another contribution the Vulcan made to the Falklands War. Very definitely. One of the things that did strike me, I was involved in Desert Storm. I was flying one day with the VC-10 tanker. We had 2 Buccaneers on the right wing, there to do the laser designating. We had 3 Tornadoes on the left wing, each I think with 3 1,000-pound bombs. So counting the tanker, we had 6 aircraft to drop 9 bombs, which is fine, and it worked very well. But I couldn't help but think at the time that the Vulcan could carry 14 laser-guided bombs in the bomb bay. They were slightly longer than the ballistic ones, so only 14. We could certainly have got 3 under each wing on the pylons, so one Vulcan could perhaps have done 20 bombs, probably 2 sorties a day. I think it's a shame in some ways we didn't have the Vulcan for Desert Storm. I'm sure it could have made another contribution which would have been well worthwhile doing.
The operation to deliver 21 1,000-pound bombs to Port Stanley Airfield had taken a considerable effort out of all proportion to the bomb craters inflicted. But the effect of the attack on Argentine Air Force thinking and its combat capability was also out of all proportion to the damage.
So after I left the Vulcans, I was on 44 Squadron when we finally folded. I did a 3-year tour in training, and then I was posted to the VC-10s, where I currently am on 101 Squadron, which is the VC-10 tanker, and by coincidence my first Vulcan Squadron when I joined the force in the very early 70s. Our role then was part of the British nuclear deterrent, and our targets obviously part of the Warsaw Pact. The way we intended to deliver the weapons was low level. By day we would fly the aircraft by hand, looking out the window as low as we dare go, I guess 50 feet. Our training, we never went below 300 for safety reasons, but operationally I expect most pilots have been well below 100 feet. At night or in bad weather we had a special modification, a terrain following radar, and you didn't need to look out, you merely followed, again, electronic steers in the cockpit, and that was selectable as low as 200 feet. The entire mission would be flown at those sort of heights, and obviously the weapon, when released, had a long time delay built in before detonation to allow the Vulcan to get clear of the effects of the blast. Unlike the Americans, who used to maintain an airborne alert with nuclear weapons, we never ever flew for training purposes with the weapons on board. They would have been loaded prior to dispersal to our bases in the event of a war. How people felt about it, it's difficult to say. It wasn't talked about, it wasn't discussed. I think it's a question of having faith in the system. We did not believe we would ever be released to drop those weapons except in extremis, presumably following a nuclear exchange which another country had initiated. I don't know anybody in 9 years that I was on the V-Force who ever had any qualms about the job, and I don't know anyone that you wouldn't have thought would have been able to do the job and be there on the day.
In August 1956, 230 Operational Conversion Unit was set up at Waddington to train crews on the new aircraft. With 83, 101, 50 and 44 squadrons all based here, the giant white Delta with the Red Cross of Lincoln emblazoned on the tail fin was soon to be a familiar sight over the Lincolnshire countryside. Continuously training on the new type, the Vulcan crews were achieving consistently good results in bombing and navigation exercises. Vulcans from 83 Squadron were selected for goodwill tours, including, ironically, a trip to Buenos Aires to mark the Argentine presidential inauguration ceremonies. This classic footage from 1959 tells some of the story of the Vulcans at Waddington, while neatly avoiding detail of their sensitive and less savoury nuclear armaments.
Responsible for the instrumentation and countless number of pieces of electronic equipment, this section does its job to keep the massive aircraft flying. 4 Bristol Olympus jet engines power the Vulcan. Only the best air crews are selected for V-Force training. Captains, co-pilots, navigators, and air electronics officers must have wide experience in their respective roles. Their personal qualities count too, and until they're ready to embark upon their air training, they attend extensive specialized ground courses. A fully fledged crew is ready to take to the air. As in civilian airports, buses take them to their aircraft, which awaits them at dispersal. What fantastic machines these Delta wings are. There are 14 miles of electric cables in each one of them, 9,365 feet of tubing, and, not including the engines, over 167,000 different parts. Hundreds of thousands of nuts, bolts, washers and rivets hold the gigantic machine together. Local control gives the okay to take off. According to the weight of the aircraft, so do takeoff speeds vary. The altitude of the airfield, temperature of the day, atmospheric pressure, all have to be taken into account. The takeoff speed is usually around 130 to 140 knots.
Starboard one is reading also 70 knots, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120, check speed is okay, 130, 135, on stick, thank you very much. Roger, understand transition 3,000 feet, flight level now 40, climbing, Delta 83, listening out.
Here they are, thousands of feet above the ground in a world of their own. How graceful they look, how different they seem, in the element to which they really belong. Sometimes on clear days we look up to the sky and see vapor trails like this. Everything they've been taught on previous dual exercises is now put into practice. High altitude bombing and navigation sorties, the practicing of emergency procedures, instrument flying and control approaches for landing. Control, dissatisfied with their line-up with the runway, tells them to overshoot and try again.
Closing right to left towards runway extended center line. Just half a mile to go. Still slightly right of center line. Unable to get you in off this approach. Look ahead and overshoot. Delta 83, Waddington talk down, listening out.
Delta 83, overshooting.
The V-Force was becoming an extremely efficient organization with a strong nucleus of select star crews, the highest V-Force classification. In 1958, the 3 Vulcan B-1 squadrons gradually assumed the role of spearhead for the British nuclear deterrent. Airmen were assigned to quick reaction alert duties once a week, plus 1 weekend in every 3, standing by for the alert none of them wanted to hear.
Scandal! Scandal!
The flying side of the station's activities goes into action. No time now for unnecessary formalities. No time for anything except to get the aircraft off the ground fast.
Vulcan cockpits were fitted with shields for protection against nuclear flash. Only the forward vision panels were exposed during takeoff. During the remainder of the sortie, the whole cockpit was blacked out, the route being flown solely by radar. In 1960, the first bigger and more powerful B-2 Vulcan was delivered to the RAF. This was XH558. It arrived at Waddington on the 1st of July that year. The B-2 had a 111-foot span, 12 feet wider than the B-1, with increased range, speed and capacity. It was designed to carry Britain's new nuclear weapons, blue steel.
A glimpse of secrets, the new standoff bomb carried under a Vulcan.
After a complex fail-safe pre-launch procedure, which involved the first pilot, both navigators and the AEO, the missile could be fired 100 miles away from the target. In 1963, anti-aircraft missiles had been developed to such an extent that high-level missions were no longer viable. The Vulcan, with its robust airframe, was the most suitable V-bomber for low-level operations. It was repainted in light grey and dark green camouflage and had new bulges housing terrain-following equipment.
When I joined the Vulcans, we were still maintaining QRA, which was each station at Scampton and Waddington maintaining 3 aircraft at readiness on the grounds, the famous 4-minute warning. Now, those aircraft would never fly except in the event of a war. They might taxi as part of a practice scramble, but never get airborne, because they, uniquely among the Vulcans, were sitting armed with operational nuclear weapons. Part of the V-Force posture was that, although we were based at Scampton and Waddington in the United Kingdom, in the event of a war, we would disperse to other military and civil bases across the country, so you don't have all your eggs in one basket. And then in the event of a 4-minute warning, there would be 4 Vulcans getting airborne from perhaps 20 or 30 different airfields around the United Kingdom to give us the chance to get airborne and disperse before any incoming nuclear weapons can take us out.
For the 7 years that the V-Force operated the Quick Reaction Alert program, the RAF had maintained the highest state of combat readiness it had ever known in peacetime. Blue steel ceased to be operational at the end of the 1970s. The last B-1 was to fly as a testbed for Concorde and Tornado engines. The B-2s, meanwhile, reverted to a conventional bomber role and were to be gradually phased out in the early 80s. Vulcan B-2s were given a second lease of life during and just after the Falklands conflict, when a number were converted into tankers as a stopgap measure to replace the fleet of Victors which had been committed to the South Atlantic. In 1984, this squadron was disbanded, and XH558, the first B-2 to fly with the Air Force, was selected to be the last, preserved for display flying. Its final role being to delight airshow goers as one of the most spectacular display attractions. The following sequence speaks for itself.
The Vulcan is due to arrive at 2:30 this afternoon. It's arriving in formation with the red arrows. Later in the afternoon, the strongest man in the world is going to attempt to pull the Vulcan, so that between 2:30 and just before 3 o'clock you will get all the shots, the last shots that you'll ever get of an airborne Vulcan.
It doesn't, words, well, it just fails me. It's, to say it no more, I'm sorry, it's just one of those things. Beautiful aeroplane. An air show isn't an air show without a Vulcan.
If you are interested in Vulcan survival, go and... One good thing about the arrangement parking here is you get a good close view of... See the red arrows. Here they are. redesigned to a 1946 spec. Photograph here in a few moments, I think, as the Vulcan, which was the result of thoughts on paper in 46, passes slowly over the B-17. The cadet Atlantique got in the way, which was just about going out of service round about there. In fact, had just gone out of service. Version of the Vulcan. Considerable redesign of the wing leading edge, among other things. It was the world's first four-jet Delta bomber. Farewell written on one of the bomb doors. Designed originally as a high-altitude, high-speed bomber, cruising at near Mach 1, just below the speed of sound, at some 60,000 feet. Then when its role changed, when surface-to-air missiles began to acquire the range and lethality to make that a dangerous game, Vulcan came back with a low-level role in supporting NATO. The last of the great Avro 4-engine bombers and maritime reconnaissance aircraft, going back through the Shackleton and the Lincoln to the Lancaster. Vulcan was, I suppose, probably the last aircraft in the RAF which was designed for scramble operations.
beautiful at the end. As usual, she gave a beautiful display. When they played the last post, that was when emotions really overcame me, and I did break down at that point. Then went over to see her, stood very close by, and then when they said that they were going to allow people to get a bit closer, I actually broke ranks then and went right up to her. I shouldn't have been there, I don't suppose, but did manage to get into the cockpit and have two very special souvenirs. One is the soot out of her exhaust, and the other one, a bit of axle grease, and those will stay there forever.
Oh, it's just so much. Oh, one word. Wow.
This is the last flight. Oh, that's how it's being built.
This is the last display. A perfect example of the British aircraft industry in the days when we were able to produce really great aircraft like this.
Would you like to see it continue flying?
Oh yes, I don't think they have any shortage of volunteers from the crew to fly it, or from the ground crew either.
Here we go then, ladies and gentlemen. He's preparing now. He's getting down. Come on, give him a big shout. Cheer him on. David, come on. David, come on. He's going to pull him over.
Spectators turned out to see the last official public air display of the Vulcan bomber. It was an emotional day for the plane's crew and for campaigners. More recently, bomb displays throughout the country, earning a special place in the heart of aviation enthusiasts. Capable of reaching speeds of more than 600 miles an hour, it can fly for 4,000 miles without refueling. But now its flying days seem over.
What were they thinking of when they just say they want to scrap it? Have they ever gone to an air show and see the effect it has on the spectators? Well, this particular aircraft is so unique. To some of them, they were just a nuisance, the noise they used to make. But that's the name of the game. As I say, I feel angry, frustrated, and wish I could do something about it.
There's a lot of grown men shed a tear yesterday to actually think that that would be the last time I saw the Vulcan flying. The plane has given me a lot of pleasure over the years, as well as millions of others, and to think that that was going to be the last time it could possibly fly was a very sad thought.
I believe that aircraft are there to fly. We've got plenty of Vulcans in museums, so I'm afraid I'm not terribly sentimental about aircraft that are kept on the ground. I don't think anybody's flown anything like the Vulcan. It's a unique machine.
They shouldn't get rid of it.
In the autumn of 1992, XH558's airframe reached the end of its fatigue life. The costly major service which would be required to keep this aircraft airworthy for another 10 years has been vetoed. It seems that the aircraft that helped keep the peace during the dangerous Cold War years and influenced the designers of Concorde has been permanently grounded.
Get the COG just right.
How was the timing?
Anybody else to come out? Yes, right. Yes, ladies. Rusty, how's your holiday? I'll wait till he's put. Oh, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think we're all very sad. End of an era, and it's a great shame, but you know, we've had a good run for our money. I think the public enjoyed the aircraft. We've enjoyed flying. It's been a great privilege to be the last aircrew of the Vulcan.